Neil Tennant, Chris Lowe, Pet Shop Boys. How are you? Good to meet you.
We're good. It's the day the album's released.
I was just going to say, very exciting.
Always
are you feeling
exciting.
super?
We are feeling very super.
Always.
Yes.
Always super.
Yes.
Great feedback. I love it as well.
Thank you.
I think it's a fantastic album. Would you see it as like an extension of Electric? Because that was the last album. Same producer, obviously, Stuart Price.
In making the album, we decided to start from where we'd left off. The last track on Electric is probably our favourite track on Electric, Vocal, which is a very big up dance track. And on the last tour, I sound like someone in a rock band now, but on the last tour it did go down unbelievably. We used to make it as the final encore and it used to bring the house down every night. So we wanted to kind of build on that.
Laser Crazy as well.
We love lasers, yeah. And so this album starts with Happiness, which is this very up, crazy, semi-instrumental track. And I think if you were just to segue Vocal into Happiness, that would totally work.
Do you think with Stuart Price on board again, do you think there was a different direction this time round? Or was it kind of wanting to do the success of the last album and continue that?
Yeah, we wanted to carry on where we left off. I think we just understood, we had an understanding of what we were all aiming for before we started it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, take what we did and go further with it. So, I mean, it's a very super electric album, super.
It's very joyous, I think. I think the last album was as well, but there were a few more dark elements.
There's dark elements on. I think maybe this album's a bit has darker moments than the last album had.
But there's probably more outright euphoric dance tracks on this than there's ever been on any of our other albums.
I think it's got that shift, doesn't it, halfway through? It does go kind of 2 a.m. clubby. It's almost like you've arrived at a club, you've got the pop tracks at the
Inner
beginning.
Sanctum. Inner Sanctum.
I wanted to ask about, because obviously you've been together since 81, that's when it started. Together as a working relationship, are you still learning about each other now in 2016?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah?
I think a person is a sort of universe. And there's a lot to learn in the universe.
So it's never really like you're kind of feeling that laid back when you record an album. It's still a challenge for you to record.
That's a separate question, though.
Okay, that was a loaded one.
No, it's. I mean, it's always a challenge, but it's always enjoyable and stimulating. And I think more than anything else, writing a song is magical. You can go into a room and you come out with something that didn't exist before.
I'm very intrigued by the fact that you're playing the Royal Opera House, because I think it's such a fantastic venue as well. And I like the fact you're a pop dance band that's playing a very grandeur building, because I think that elements of that come across in your music anyway.
That's why we called these shows Inner Sanctum, because we were thinking what a contrast it was making this album, and you sort of think, oh, they're going to premiere it in Ibiza.
Yeah.
And actually, we're premiering at the Royal Opera House. But the Royal Opera House is a kind of inner sanctum, isn't it? So that sort of brought it all together.
Was that deliberate on your part? Because I know that you've played the Royal Albert Hall before with the Alan Turing tribute. That you did.
But the Royal Opera House is a very, very grand venue. And I think we're sort of the music will contrast with the venue. They've asked us to do it several times, actually. But this time, we suddenly, with our manager, we thought maybe now's the time to do it. It was a new album. It's a sort of a big event. And also we like the fact that the Royal Opera House want to bring in an audience who don't normally go there. I think for a lot of people, it'll be their first visit to the Royal Opera House and, having the smoked salmon sandwiches in the
we are having smoked salmon sandwiches, because I'm not going if there aren't.
I love the smoked salmon sandwiches there.
I love the fact that it is kind of unexpected as well, because I just remember Susan the Banshees playing the Albert Hall back in the early 80s, and it was the same kind of thing. It was like a punk band or, whatever you want to call that band. It's them playing
And also at the Royal Opera House, we've turned the orchestra pit into a mosh pit.
Great.
That's the only standing tickets.
Because I think your shows are always very, widescreen, I think, and also kind of unexpected as well, because a lot of people have that bracket of a pop band. They're meant to behave a certain way, but I think if you go to a place like the Royal Opera House, I think it's...
Well, also, we're lucky our designer, Ez Devlin, who's done our last 3 tours, she also designs theatre and opera, and so she's worked in the Royal Opera House quite a bit.
Okay.
So she knows She knows the people. She knows the guys behind the scenes. She knows how the space works.
So visually, are we allowed to know anything about
We
that
don't
show
know
yet?
yet.
Oh, you don't know yet?
And we're still
Okay.
talking about it. We've got 3.5 months, but actually, I remember saying it was 6 months, and now we're saying it's 3.5
Panic
months.
hasn't set in just yet.
Yeah, but it's probably not very far.
Now, you've worked with a lot of people, Dusty Springfield, Bowie, Patsy Kensit. Are there any collaborators that you've got on your bucket list to work with in the future?
Well, we do now, since you announced it.
Yes.
They've already responded.
There's this a friend of ours, Joel Gibb, who's in a group called the Hidden Cameras. He lives in Berlin, and we sometimes hang out with him. And one of the nicest things we do is hang out in his apartment, and we play each other records and stuff, and he has vinyl. Anyway, he played us this song by this artist called Molly Nielsen, called Hotel Home, and she's got a fantastic voice, sort of sounds like Nico or something. It's absolutely amazing. And the possibility that we might do a remix of that single. She has got the most brilliant voice. In fact, it'd be nice to do a record.
And bringing her to potentially to a bigger audience as well, if people don't know
she is
much
quite
about
obscure
her.
because actually no one's heard of her.
Zane Lowe, hadn't heard of her.
Yeah, so.
Okay, that's a first.
Yes.
You've always embraced dance culture. I'm curious to know what you think of the London scene, because obviously the Soho scene has been part of your songs before and the inspiration. How do you see that now, particularly with the gay scene in London? It's splitting, isn't it, with gentrification and Vauxhall?
Yeah, I don't go out clubbing or barring as much. You know, West End Girls years ago was written about the dive bar in Chinatown, and that whole kind of scene. That was the idea of a bar in London, central London, that's almost empty.
Yeah.
And it was a very funny place where they used to play soundtracks of shows or Barbra Streisand on a vinyl record player, and there'd just be a few guys sitting in there. And then it got quite trendy. Sort of students started to go there because it was such a funny, unusual place. That sort of place doesn't really exist anymore, does it?
I guess in some ways it's coming full circle again, isn't it? Because a lot of bars and clubs are closing down or becoming quieter.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll see that resurgence.
Well, the only
again.
one we ever go to, and I've now forgotten the name of it, on the corner of Gerrard Street. It's on Gerrard Street.
A place I've been to a few times is The Glory.
Oh,
Johnny
yeah.
Woo's place.
Yeah.
Went to, because I like the cabaret downstairs, and Princess Julia had her one-woman show there and everything, which was fantastic.
And that's where the event is tonight, isn't it?
It
album.
is, and that leads us straight on to...
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
That's not an official event.
Is it not
but
officially
No, but we've
endorsed?
given them... well, we wouldn't do that, but we have given them some signed vinyl or something. I don't quite know what we've
Quite
given them.
tempted to go myself, actually, but I think it'd be a bit much.
Well, I don't know. It could be a surprise.
It's a bit weird going to your
Maybe
own...
people, expect you to be there, though. Maybe that's... I mean, it's a celebration, isn't it, of the album?
I think it's
And quite
great.
rightly so.
There's one happening in
And then there's another one, but that might be...
Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another one happening.
Going back to the collaborators, Bowie, obviously very sad news at the beginning of this year. Where were you when you found out that he'd died?
Well, it was first in the morning. I woke up, and I often look at the news. No, I normally actually look at the news first thing on my phone on the BBC website, and it was the headline.
Massive shock to the system.
A massive shock to the system.
And for you guys, obviously, because you've worked with him before.
Yeah, yeah,
terribly
but
sad.
also more because, having worked with him, that's when a legend becomes a human being, and the sort of legend thing falls away a bit. But also, right from 1972, when I was growing up in Newcastle, he was such a big thing for us. He was like sort of everything, really.
I think he touched so many people's lives for different reasons.
Yeah,
And I don't think everybody can do that.
I mean, primarily musical, but also the way he looked, the sort of bisexual thing, which he backed away from later on. Didn't he? But just when we did Hello Space Boy, what attracted me to that song was the fact that it restated his essential themes of otherworldliness, space, and also gender confusion. Do you like boys or girls? It's confusing these days. Now that is in pretty much in Rebel Rebel. It's got a very similar sentiment in the lyric. And I thought it was great that David Bowie had restated these two themes in this one song.
back to the new album, Super.
Yeah.
What are your personal favourites? I guess it's like choosing a favourite baby, isn't it? Or favourite son or daughter. Is it difficult to choose a favourite track on there? Have you got one standout highlight? I mean, my favourite is, well, there's two actually. Patso and also Say It To Me. Just exhilarating tracks. And they kind of give me the goosebump feeling,
I
which
think
a lot of your
Justin
tracks
Bieber
do.
could sing Say It To Me.
Okay.
That'd be good. I'll sell a few copies.
Yeah. My favourite tracks are, well, I like the Pop Kids very much. It's funny.
Great single choice.
The Pop Kids is so instant, you sort of think you're going to get sick of it. And then recently I've actually switched on the radio. In fact, the other night I switched on the radio. I was going to bed and Pop Kids came out the speakers. And I was thinking it sounds really good on the radio. And I like Inner Sanctum very much as well.
And you, Chris?
Yeah, it's difficult to choose a favourite. But the song I think that's been very well realised in the studio with Stuart is Inner Sanctum. To capture that level of euphoria.
Yeah.
You know, it's really banging, isn't it?
And primarily instrumental, of course, as well. Well,
yeah, but the
largely
lyrics,
instrumental.
when they come, match the music perfectly.
Is that something you've toyed with doing in the future? And I know you've done instrumental versions of albums before, but as an actually, as
Do
an
an
official
instrumental
release.
album? No. When we did the album, do you remember Relentless?
Yes, of course.
Went out with Very. That's sort of instrumental.
Yeah.
I know there are sung bits and what have you on it, but it's sort of an instrumental album. And we did that because we had those instrumentals lying around. We didn't really quite know what to do with them, really. I mean, that's a wonderful... We should re-release that, really. It's a wonderful album, though. We could do something like that again, maybe a companion piece. On the album Elysium, as I think maybe you know, we put out a bonus album of just the instrumentals. I really like hearing tracks without the vocal because you hear what's going on in the music. I think that's... I'm quite happy to do that for every album, but I don't think people seem to be that interested in it.
And I guess it's breathing space in an album if you've got an instrumental track halfway through, or it's almost like another part of the album coming up, like an intermission almost.
Yeah, or it just you listen to it in a different way, and then when the lyrics come back in on the next track, it's kind of energised you a bit.
The Alan Turing show at the Albert Hall I thought was fantastic a couple of years ago.
You.
Or was it last year? A couple of years ago.
No, it was the year before last, wasn't it? Yeah.
Any plans to release that as
yes.
recording?
No, the reason it sort of disappeared is because we were planning to turn it into a little bit more of a stage show. It doesn't mean it's turning into a Broadway musical. It just to visualise it a bit more. And
Okay.
We're planning to work with the theatre director we know on that, but it won't be till the year after next.
I think the beauty of that show, along with all your contributors, Chrissy Hynde and Juliet Stevenson, I think was the image that I had in my head. Because a lot of it was, although you were there was a lot of imagery that I had.
Of Alan Turing.
Of Alan Turing.
Well,
the whole story.
the reason we did it, because when we wrote the whole thing, in fact, we wrote it without knowing what we were going to do with it. We just wrote it. And then the guy who ran Radio 3, I met him and he said, what we do? And I mentioned this thing. He said, we must have this for the proms. I was sort of flabbergasted, really. But it's definitely for Alan Turing. And when we were working on it and when we performed it at the proms, and we're very lucky we collaborated with Andrew Hodges, who wrote the wonderful biography of Alan Turing. And he wrote that because he's a mathematician, but also he's gay. And in the 70s he was a gay activist, and he brought both those huge strands in his life together for this monumental biography. But you could sort of sense, I don't know, it's whimsical in a way, but you could sort of sense Alan Turing through the piece, I thought.
It's a very powerful story as well.
It's very...
Well, it's tragic, isn't it?
Yeah, thought-provoking.
It's so horrendous.
It is. And then during the course of it, of course, the government apologised, and then he was pardoned. Which Gordon Brown had thought was not possible to do. And, of course, that has created a whole debate, because I think they should pardon everyone. I mean, if you think about in South Africa after apartheid or Eastern Europe after communism, you would have people, well, particularly under communism, people who'd gone to prison were were, I can't know what the word is, exonerated or whatever, for having been put in prison for something that wasn't really a crime. It was just a political thing. And I think when you think of all the guys whose lives have been ruined since Oscar Wilde or whatever, but particularly in the 1950s and 60s, but they probably weren't talked about, and people committed suicide, and I kind of think they deserve to have the record
Absolutely
wiped.
I just quickly want to ask you about sub-genres in music, because I know obviously you're a dance pop band, but you've touched on the acoustic work. Is there any sub-genre that you haven't touched that you'd like to? Because I know perhaps if you look back at the early 80s stuff from high energy all the way through to deep house and EDM, obviously, which is the last few years, that perhaps you've been inspired by. Is there anything else that you... Because I know, Chris, you hate rock and roll.
Well, yeah.
Rock music.
Well, I quite like... Well, actually, I loved going to see Oasis at Wembley. And so
We did our Oasis tribute.
I sort of hated rock and roll then, but then that was before Britpop and rock changed, didn't it? When Suede and all those sort of groups came along, and they were sort of more pop influenced. I didn't like all that sort of. I'm not going to name names, but you know what sort of music I didn't like.
Pompous rock.
But yeah, for me, there's only two categories of music, and music I like and music I don't like. I don't really have much in between.
That's good. That's a passion, though, isn't it? You either love something or you don't like something.
Yeah.
I think you know when you do.
Yeah, there's not
kind of just want to
a big
concentrate on
swathe
that.
of music that I quite like in the middle. It's black or white with me, generally.
It's a big question mark over the future Pet Shop Boys direction.
Well, the great thing about dance music is, I mean, for me, I loved disco, and where we are now is it's just been a direct line. It's been a continuous progression of what I've always liked.
Yeah. I love the new album. Congratulations, it's fantastic.
Thank
and
you.
I wish you all the best with it. And it's really good to meet you today. And also success for the Pop Kids single as well. And the
Thank you.
shows in July,
Yeah.
which I'm looking forward to seeing.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
very much.
So
Nice to meet you.
thanks very much.